Hello dear lovely student, as you know I'm Mr. Rajwan. I'm with you with next lesson. We start with chapter 1 lesson 3. Now today's lesson we talk about simplifying square root expression, page 12. The first things that you have to know, we have to know what's like radical and what's unlike radical. Okay. What's like radical? Like radical means we have the same number or the same variable inside the square root. For example, if you look at square root 5 and square root 5, because we have the same number inside the square root, we call these are like radical. And if you look at square root 7 square root x and 2 square root x, because we have the same variable inside the square root, so we can say these are like radical. And if you look at 3 square root 40 and square root 40, because we have the same thing inside the square root, so we can say these are the same thing and it's like radical. And what's unlike radical? Unlike radical means we don't have the same number and the same variable inside the square root. If you look at 2 and square root 15, there is no square root, and 2 and 15 is not the same. So these are not like radical, or we can say it's unlike radical. And if you look at 7 square root x and square root 7x, because we don't have the same number or same variable inside the square root, so it's not like radical, it's unlike radical. And if you look at 3 square root 2 and square root 3, we can see 2 and 3 is different. So because we don't have the same number and same variable inside the square root, so it's unlike radical. Then okay. Now, look at the note. When we add and subtract square root expressions, the radical must be the same. What is it? It said we can add and subtract 2 radical, the coefficient of 2 radical, if we have the same radical. Okay? For example, if you look at 3 square root 5 plus 8 square root 5. Look, because we have the same radical, we can add and subtract the coefficient or the number in front of the square. So we have 3 plus 8 with square root 5. Keep 1 square root. And 3 plus 8, we get 11. So the answer is 11 square root 5. And if you look at question B, we have 4 square root 3 minus 2 square root 3. The first thing that you have to know, you have to look at the square root. We have the same radical? Yes. Because we have the same radical, as we said, we have to add and subtract the number in front of the square root. So 4 minus 2, we get 2 square root 3. And look, we have square root y and square root y. We have the same square root, so it's like radical. If we have the same radical, as we said, we can add and subtract the number in front of the square root. So 9 minus 5, we get 4 square root y. Look at the note. Square root 2 plus 4 square root 2. Look, if there is no number in front of the square root, it means we have 1 up there. So we have 1 square root 2 plus 4 square root 2. As we said, if we don't have any number in front of the square root, it means we have 1 up there. So we have 1 plus 4, 1 plus 4, we get 5 square root 2. It's the last answer. Now, we said if we have the same radical, we can add and subtract the number in front of the square root. Let's go to the next page. Now we have simplify each expression. Okay. Now, example, simplify each expression. A, 3 square root 8 minus square root 45. But if you look at these two square root, it's not like radical. But we have to simplify it. How? How can we simplify 2 square root if it's not the same? You have to use perfect square to simplify each square root. Now, if you look at 3 square root 8 minus square root 45. Which factor of 8 is perfect square? The factor of 8 is 1 times 8, we get 8, and 2 times 4, we get 8. If you look at 2 times 4, because 4 is perfect square, you have to choose 2 times 4. And for 45, we have 1 times 45 and 3 times 15 and 9 times 5. If you look at this factor of 45, we can see 9 is perfect square. So, because we have 9 times 5, we get 45, and 9 is perfect square. So, you have to choose 9 times 5, and for 8, 2 times 4. Now, I'm going to solve it. Okay. We have to substitute 2 times 4 from 8. 2 times 4, or we can write 4 times 2, the same. Okay. 3. Okay. 3 square root 8 minus square root 45. We said we can write 4 times 2 minus square root 9 times 5. Now, we have to distribute the square root for both of factors. So it means we have 3 times square root 4 times square root 2 minus 9 times square root 5. 4 is perfect square. We can directly get the answer of square root 4. Square root 4 is 2. So we can write 3 times 2 times square root 2. Because 2 is not perfect square, we can find the square root of 2 directly. And because 9 is perfect square, we can find the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. So 3 and times square root 5. Now, 3 times 2, we get square root 2 minus 3 square root 5. Now, because 2 and 5 is not perfect square, and there is no factor is perfect square, so we have to leave it at there. So the simplest form of 3 square root 8 minus 45, we get square root 2 minus 3 square root 5. Okay? And question B. We have 3 square root 12 minus square root 75. So it's not like radical, so we can simplify it if we have perfect square. Okay, so what's the factor of 12? We have 1 times 12 and 3 times 4 and 2 times 6. But which one is perfect square? 3 times 4, we get 12. Because 4 is perfect square, we have to choose 3 times 4. So 3 square root 4 times 3 minus. Okay. And what's the factor of 75? We have 1 times 12 and 25 times 3. 25 times 3. If we can see 25 is perfect square, we can write 25 times 3. Okay. Now, we have to distribute the square root for both factors. Now, 3 times square root 4 times square root 3 minus square root 25 times square root 3. And bring down 3 times, and the square root of 4 is 2. Why? Because 4 is perfect square. We can get directly the square root of 4. So we have 2 times square root 3 minus 25 is perfect square. Directly we get 5 times square root 3. And 3 times 2, we get square root 3 minus 5 square root 3. Now, because we have the same radical, you have to add and subtract the number in front of the square. So 5 minus 5, we get 1 square root 3, or we can write square root 3. Now the simplest form of 3 square root 12 minus square root 75 is square root 3, or 1 square root 3. Okay. Now, okay. We have a square root 18 minus square root 2. You have to simplify. What's the simplest form? 18 minus square root 18 minus square root 2. Now, you have to choose the factor. We have to choose the factor of 18 that one of them is perfect square. Which factor of 18 is perfect square? What's the factor of 18? We can say we have 1 times 18, 1 times 18, and 2 times 9, and 3 times 6. Okay, which one is perfect square? We can see 9 times 2 or 2 times 9, we get 18, and 9 is perfect square. So we have to choose 2 times 9 or 9 times 2. So 9 times 2 minus square root 2. And the square root of 9, we get 3. What's square root 2? Minus square root 2. And we said if we don't have any number in front of the square root, it means we have 1 at there. So Because we have the same square root with the same number, we can see it's like radical. If we have the same radical, we have to add and subtract the number in front of the square root. So 3 minus 1, we get 2 square root 2. Now, the simplest form of square root 18 minus square root 2, we get 2 square root 2. Okay. Now we talk about using distributive property. Okay. Okay. What's distributive property? Distributive property said if we have a number in front of the parentheses and if we have b times c, b plus or minus c, sorry, b plus or minus c, we can distribute the number in front of the square root inside the square root by multiplication. So, a times b plus or minus a times c. It's distributive property. Now, we use distributive property to simplify each question. Now, square root 3 minus 5. We have square root 3. Okay? We have square root 3. Okay? Square root 3. And inside the square root, inside the bracket or parentheses, we have square root 3 minus square root 5. Look, previous lesson, we talk about if we have the same square root and the sign between them is multiplication, directly cancel the square root, we get a. For example, if we multiply square root 3 times square root 3, cancel the bracket, we get 3. And if we have square root 4 times square root 4, we get 4. Square root 5 times square root 5, we get 5. Square root 10 times square root 10, we get 10. Now, okay. Square root 3 minus square root 5. Now, square root 3 times square root 3 and square root 3 times square root 5. Look, square root 3 times square root 3. Positive times negative, we get negative. And square root 3 times square root 5. We said if we have the same square root and the sign between them is multiplication, directly cancel the square root, we get 3 minus square root 3 times square root 5. Now we have to join to one square root. We get 3 times 5. So 3 minus 5. 3 times 5, we get 15. So the simplest form of square root 3 minus square root 5, we get 3 minus square root 15. And, okay, if we look at question B, we have 4 plus square root 5 minus 3 minus square root 5. Now, we have two parentheses. Okay, we have 4 plus square root 5 and 3 minus square root 5. Look, you have to multiply each number by 4 and square root 5. So 4 times 4 times 3 and 4 times square root of 5, and square root 5 times 3 and square root 5 times 5. Now, 4 times 3, we get 12. What's the sign of 4? We have positive 4. Positive times negative, we get negative. Then, 4 times square root 5. We cannot multiply these two numbers together because we have integer number and square root. Then, positive times positive, we get positive. And square root 5 times 3, we have to write 3 square root of 5. Okay. Then, negative times positive, we get negative. Square root 5 times square root 5, because we have the same number and the sign between them is multiplication, so directly remove the bracket, we get 5. Now, you have to combine like theorem. So, 12 minus 5 minus 4 square root 5 plus 3 square root 5. 12 minus 5, we get positive 7. Then, we have the same square root. As we said, when we have the same square root, we can add and subtract the number in front of the square root. So, what's the number in front of the square root? Minus 4 plus 3. Because we have different sign, you have to subtract together, then put down the sign of great number. So, minus 4 plus 3, minus 4 plus 3, because we have different sign, you have to subtract. 4 minus 3, we get 1. And which one is greater? 4. What's the sign of 4? Minus. So we get minus 1 square root 5, or we can write 7 minus square root 5. Now, the simplest form of 4 plus square root 5 and 3 minus square root 5 is 7 minus square root of 5. Okay. Now we have square root 7 minus 5 all square. Or we can say square root 7 minus 5 all power 2. Now, if we have 2 as exponent, okay, what should we do? We have to make 2 bracket or parentheses. Okay, you have to write the number in front of or inside the bracket. So we have square root 7 minus 5. Now, we do the same process as previous example, I mean. Okay? Now, square root 7 times square root 7, square root 7 times 5, negative 5 times square root 7, and negative 5 times negative 5. First, we start with square root 7 times square root 7. Square root 7 times square root 7, we get 7. And square root 7 times minus 5, we get minus 5 square root 7. And minus 5 times square root 7, we get minus 5 square root 7. And minus 5 times minus 5, we get positive 25. Now, 7 plus 25, we get 32. And if you look at these numbers, okay, look, we have like radical, yes, and we have minus 5 and minus 5. Because we have the same sign, we have to add these numbers together, then put down sign of great number. Okay, now, because we have the same sign, we get negative. Okay. Minus 5, minus 10 square root 7. So the simplest form is 32 minus 10 square root 7. Okay? Now, the last part of our lesson is rationalize. Now, if I look at this note, Rationalize the denominator. Sometimes the denominator in algebraic expression involves square root. We use multiply the numerator and denominator by denominator square root. What is it? If you look at these two examples, okay, look. If we have square root as in the denominator, it's not allowed. So you have to cancel the square root at denominator. How? You have to both denominator and numerator by the denominator, square root of denominator. Look at square root 7 over square root 2. We said it's not allowed square root in the denominator. So you have to both denominator and numerator by the square root of the denominator. What's the square root of the denominator? We have square root 2. Now, 2 times square root 2 times square root 2, we get 2. Because we have the same square root with times or multiplication, we get the number without square root. So we have 2. Now, we cancel square root in the denominator ID. Okay, then square root 7 times square root 2, we get square root 14. Now, if you look at this answer, we can see there is no denominator, there is no square root at the denominator. Now, let's do question B. We have 1 plus square root 3 over 2 square root 3. If you see, we can see we have square root at the denominator. It's not allowed. We have to numerator and denominator by square root of 3. So we have to both multiply by square root of 3. 3 times square root 3 times square root 3, we get 3. And we get 2 times 3. And square root 3 times 1, we get square root 3. And plus it. Square root 3 times square root 3, we get 3. Then 2 times 3, we get 6. And square root 3 plus 3. Now the simplest form of 1 plus square root 3 over 2 square root 3, we get square root 3 plus 3 over 6. Now it's rationalized of denominator. We can see rationalize the denominator. Sometimes the denominator in algebraic expression involves square root. You have to cancel the square root at the denominator by using multiplication, or we can say we have to both denominator and numerator multiply by the square root of denominator. Okay. Now I'll solve this national examination question, or we can say it's Nishtimani question. Now we start with question 1. Question 1 is okay. Question 1. Simplify 9 square root 2 minus 4 square root 2 is A. Square root 2, B. 5 square root 2, C. 13 square root 2, and D. 10 square root 2. If you look at the question, we can see we have the same radical. We have square root 2 because inside the square root have the same number. So we can add and subtract it in front of the variable. So, 9 minus 4, we get 5. 9 minus 4, we get 5. And keep the square root. Okay? Which one is 5 square root 2? It's not 5 square root 2. And C is not. And the same. So, the right answer is B. And okay. Question 2. Simplify of 8 minus square root 11 and 8 plus square root 11 is 5, 57, negative 57, and 53. Which one is the right answer? Okay, I'll solve it. Look. Okay, look. 8 minus square root 11. Okay, and 8 plus square root 11. Okay, 8 times 8 we get 64. Plus 8 times 11 we get 8 square root 11. Minus 8 square root 11. Negative times positive, we get negative. And square root 11 times square root 11, we get 11. Then, if you look at 8 square root 11 minus 8 square root 11, because we have the same radical, so we can add and subtract the number in front of the square root. So 8 minus 8, we get 0, it's cancelled. So we have 64 minus 11. 64 minus 11, we get 53. So the right answer is positive 53. Now we have 57 minus 57 and 53. So the right answer is D, is 53. Now let's do question 3. Question 3 is multiply 3 square root skis times 5 square root skis. So we have 3 times square root skis or times 5 square root skis. Now, okay, 3 times 5 we get 50. And square root skis times square root skis, we get skis. And 15 times skis, we get 90. So 90 is the right answer. Which one is 19? So B is the right answer. Question 4. Okay, question 4. Okay. Question 4. What is the simplest form of 4 over 3 square root 2? C. We have square root 2 at the denominator. We said if we have the square root at the denominator, you have to multiply both numerator and denominator by the square root of denominator. What's the square root of denominator? 2, square root 2. So you have to both multiply by square root 2. 4 times square root 2, we get 4 square root 2 because we have integer number with square root. And 2, we have square root 2. Now, 3 times square root 2 times square root 2, we get 2. And 3 times 2, we get 6. We have 4 square root 2 over 6. Look, A, we have 2 square root 2 over 3. B, 2 square root 2. C, 4 square root 2. And D, 3 square root 2 over 2. Now, it's not right answer. So, if you look at the question, we can simplify 4 and 6. Now, what's the greatest common factor between 4 and 6? 2. So we have to both divide it by 2. 4 divided by 2, we get 2. And with the square root 2. And 6 divided by 2, we get 3. So the simplest form of 4 over 6 is 2 square root 2 over 3. Now, what's the right answer? The right answer is A, 2 square root 2 over 3. Question 5. Question 5. Okay. Question 5. What is the simplest form of square root 28? What's the square root? What's the simplest form of square root 28? Now, We said to simplify square root, you have to find the factor of 28. Which factor? The factor is one of them is perfect square, as we said. Okay, now what's the factor of 28? Look, 1 times 28, 2 times 14, and 4 times 7. Which one is perfect square? 4 times 7 equal 28. So because 4 is perfect square, we have to choose 4 times 7. Now, instead of 28, you have to write square 4 times 7. Now, distribute the square root for both factors. We get square root 4 times square root 7. We get, because 7 is not perfect square, we have to keep it. And 4 is perfect square, so the square root of 4 is 2. So the simplest form is 2 square root 7. Now the simplest form of 28 is 2 square root 7. So the correct answer is A. Last question. Okay. Find the perimeter of the trapezoid. Now, how can you find the perimeter of trapezoid? If we have trapezoid, how can you find the perimeter of trapezoid? You have to add each side of trapezoid together. Now, we have square root 8 plus square root 8 plus square root 18 plus square root 50. Now, we have the same square root. 1 and 1 are there. So 1 plus 1 we get 2. Square root 8 plus it. Square root 18 plus square root 50. Now, you have to simplify each square root. Okay, what's the factor of 8? 4 times 2. So, we can write 2 times 4 times 2. And for 18 we have 9 times 2. And for 15 we have 25 times 2. Now, the square root 4 is 2. 2 times 2 we get 4. 4 square root 2. And square root 9 is 3. 3 square root 2 plus it. Square root of 25 is 5 square root 2. Look, because we have the same radical in each term, now you have to add and subtract the number in front of the square root. Now we have plus it. So 5 plus 3 we get 8. And 8 plus 4 we get 12. So 12 square root 2. Now the correct answer is A, is 12 square root 2. Now I'm done. Hope you get benefit with our lesson. I will see you next lesson. Have a good day. Bye bye.